So where are the best and worst places to build your house or village from the permaculture perspective? I had a ton of comments asking that question after my recent video called "This Farm Design Can Heal the Planet," linked here above. So here's my response, and I hope it helps. Number 5, at the slope break. The slope break is where the slope changes from steep to gentle. We find many examples of traditional villages, towns, and settlements placed there for a number of reasons. First off, the slope break is often the change between two different ecosystems, whether it's between forest and meadow, or places where tree crops are grown and where field agriculture happens. For subsistence farmers and hunters, being at the break between these two types of environments gives access to two totally different ecosystems with different plant, animal, and soil types. So you can hunt game and collect mushrooms in the forest in one direction and grow corn and squash in the other. It's also the highest place in the landscape where it makes sense to collect and store water. So you have the yields and the materials of the forest above, a water supply at the settlement level, and flatter land down below in the valley for crops. Perfect, right? But what about the worst place in this landscape? If you watch my video, Permaculture Design for Wildfire Defense, linked above, then you'll know that placing a house at the top of the hill or ridge is the worst place in terms of wildfire danger, because fire travels up. So if you're at the top of the slope, then fire can travel up to you from any direction. You also have to build a long and possibly steep meandering road to the top, and you'll need to pump water and haul everything you need to this high point. Okay, yes, you're right, the view is beautiful, but you can make a nice trail going up there and have a comfortable bench to enjoy the view from. If you're building a fortress or a castle, then the high ground gives you a strategic advantage. But we're really talking about normal people here. Number 4.
By the way, castles only became dwellings very recently. They were casting machines.
The sun-facing side. Okay, this one is for people who live in temperate climates, where you have a winter season which gets cold. If you're in the tropics, go ahead and skip to number 3. I've previously discussed passive solar design in my video, How to Build a Permaculture Neighborhood, linked above. The sun is an incredible source of heat and light, if your home and village are placed in the correct location with the correct orientation. In the northern hemisphere, this is on a gentle south-facing slope, with the house oriented within 20 degrees east or west. If you're in the southern hemisphere, just flip the directions toward the north instead of south. See, if your home is elongated to the east and west, then in wintertime, when the sun is low on the horizon, it will strike the biggest side of your house for the maximum amount of heating and natural light. Like I said, you can shift the orientation 20 degrees in either direction and still pretty much get the full effect. Then in the
This also applies to having solar roofs. Even if you cannot get perfect south or north direction, perfectly facing the actual noon sun, it might even be better in your case to actually flip it a little bit so that within the terrain you are, it is more harmonious, it is better fit in.
summertime, when the sun is directly overhead, you'll have overhangs shielding your south-facing windows.
Yeah, it is intelligent, like the design of the Apple Park, the new Apple headquarters in San Francisco, in California. They have what you can call overhangs. In the base level, it becomes basically a porch, and not only does it give you a wonderfully comfortable place for you to just relax, especially if you shade one or two sides, but it will actually make sure that in the winter the sun enters your house, but not in the summer where the sun is higher.
And the smaller east and west sides of the house will be the only part that's exposed to the direct sun, where you can...
The east for either the northern or the southern hemisphere is always ideal. East southeast or northeast slash also east in the southern hemisphere are always ideal for you to have water. So if you want to have a reservoir for collecting the rain or your bathroom or whatever, this would be the place to do it. Even a kitchen that has water.
Plant trees for shade. Now the worst place to put
Not only do they give you shade, but they also slightly protect you from the wind. So if in your case you cannot find a slope, you can make that slope either with bigger rocks, with dirt, or with some trees, making your house be in a position equivalent to an armchair.
house in terms of passive solar gain is at the base of a steep north-facing hill or cliff. This house will be dark and dank throughout the long winter, possibly with mold problems as well as underground seepage from moisture on the north side.
Yeah, since there's nothing more important for your life than health, you should consider either south, like your house be facing south, like you were showing before, or east-west. I mean, not facing north, unless you are like in a plain terrain where it doesn't really matter. It's the same of you being you with your back against the sun or with your face. The house is always also a place more or less to just go out, eat, change clothes, sleep. So think more about that, because if you make it comfortable for you to spend your majority of the day outside, that would be ideal.
I'd like to point out a notable exception to this rule though, because if you live in a more arid area, the north slope may be where the water source is, and you have to sacrifice your solar access for water access.
Yeah, you have to adapt to whatever you have. The only thing I would just like to remember is if we were a wild animal like any other, you would just go out and find a rock shelter and just sleep in it. Maybe have some rocks to cover it during the night for you to be able to relax and sleep in safety. But that's about it. Even in common modern convenience type of life, you just need like a half container. You have the bigger ones and you have like a half one. You just have a bathroom and a very small kitchenette, and then a big area with a big rug for you to just lay and sleep all together. That's basically as natural as you can get, with also some convenience.
That's a legit choice to make. When placing a house, village, or town along a river, you have to understand how a river flows, because you need to know what land will go underwater and what will stay dry during a flood event.
Also, I mean, this would be ideal. You would try to get the water within the areas I just mentioned before. East is always good, either in the northern or southern hemisphere. If it's slightly more towards the noon sun, better. Better also works.
Let me give you a quick fluvial geomorphology 101. It's a good word, right? I want to preface this short lesson by saying that nature is really variable, and the unique geology of a particular area may not follow these rules. So chill. This is a general lesson that covers most, but not all landscapes.
I mean, all natural things in life are free. If you go to the middle of the wilderness, really one where there is no cars passing in like 10-20 kilometers from there, you can just be there. Nobody will ever question anything that you're doing. So by following such rules, you can sort of find within that big wilderness where might be the most ideal according to water and shading and sun for you to actually settle.
Best place to place a house or town? On the high side of a river, on the outside of the bend. The worst place, you guessed it, inside the bend, otherwise known as the floodplain. Speaking of water flow, let's look at another great location for a home or village, and that is number 2.
If you follow your natural instincts, as in if you just live as an animal that you are, you will naturally find it pleasant to be more in such place than other. So you should probably kind of trust that. Just grab a couple of tents or something. Just try to spend a couple of days here, a couple of days there, and see how and where you feel more comfortably. And then, if so, then build a igloo, either of wood or of ice or whatever. Ideally, you'd be in a temperate climate, of course.
Above the confluence of 2 streams. In my travels, I have observed a lot of old homesteads, indigenous villages, and ruins placed in this position on a terrace or hill above the floodplain, yet overlooking this wonderful triangle of land, which consists of good alluvial soil that was deposited here during past floods. One nice thing about this position is that you can intercept the river flow up higher and bring it to the top of the good farmland in an irrigation ditch to water the lands below. Now,
please understand that if the place that you find basically has no water, who cares? For as long as it still rains, I mean, the the vegetation should be moist and green for the herbivores to feed on. The thing is, you don't really need to drink water at all. You can just, like they are eating the water from the grass, you can eat the water by drinking their juices.
this triangle of land is often an opening within a more hilly and forested landscape. So it's a clearing which is open and sunny for farming. So our little village here is above the floodplain, above the cold air drainage, and has a good vantage point over the whole area. So down from there,
If you want to go the farming way, don't don't build a couple of cabbages and carrots for your consumption. If anything, have them for the consumption of some rabbits or whatever you prefer. Maybe have some pumpkins to feed some pork, but ideally just go the hunting way. Make sure the wilderness that you choose is filled with boar or whatever. Find a way to create some places to basically lure them into so that they reach there for the eating, but then you can trap hunt them very easily from some height and with great safety.
these 2 streams come together and they flow into a more narrow valley or canyon. Speaking of which, we come to our next bad location, which is in a narrow valley or canyon. In a narrow canyon, there are a number of disadvantages. First, there may be poor access to sunlight because of the steep hills on all sides. Second, in a major flood, there's nowhere else for the water to spread. And even if your house is out of the floodplain, the access road may not be. Third, in the event of a wildfire, depending on the wind direction, a fire can rapidly move both up and down the canyon or tight valley.
You should think more of like day-to-day situations, as in where will the sun rise, where will the sun set, where can I get some water to bathe, and yeah, where can I get some shading, some way for me to protect the wind from my back and sides. That's basically it. if you can top that with this type of specifications, even better, but they are not your priority.
So overall, it's a pretty poor location. Although, in a very arid landscape, a canyon bottom may be the only place where there's water.
Then again, it's not your priority to get water, and yeah, you just have to find a place that is temperate and that is more or less ideal. Don't go finding places which are typically flooded.
So, there are exceptions. And now, for number one, we're going to look at the best place to place homes in relation to each other, which is to cluster them. You see, a lot of times when people get land and want to have some sort of community or development, they have this idea that each home has its own little valley where they can't see any other people. And everyone has their own private little kingdom where they can look out onto unspoiled nature.
I mean, naturally, if we were surrounded by other tribes, this would be more like the place where each tribe lives in. And within your tribe, then
has their own private little kingdom where they can look out onto unspoiled nature. But the more people spread out in this fashion, the less unspoiled nature remains intact. And the amount of roads, pipes, and other infrastructure multiplies when people...
Yeah, you're not going to build nor roads nor nor pipes. You're just going to enjoy life like a beast.
Will spread out. So each home needs its own laundry facilities, energy systems, storage areas, workshops, communication networks, and a lot more. This pattern multiplies the amount of resources necessary for living and the amount of environmental impact. But when houses are clustered, then all of the infrastructure is lessened, and there's the opportunity.
Yeah, this should be your tribe. It will start as one, maybe a half container. Then it will progress as you get children or not. For as long as you are in a good place with good food to hunt, it will be a good place to develop from.
Opportunity to share resources and utilities. There are less roads, less pipes, less wires, which lowers the cost of housing and the cost of living for those involved. When we look at any traditional village around the world, we see this pattern. And it's only the car with quick long-distance travel that's made it possible for people to maintain lives spread out so remotely from each other, but the environmental cost is tremendous. If we expect the planet to maintain its growing population,
and also, like, you want to be kind of secluded in your area so that the herbivores or even the carnivores that you're going to hunt are in their area and can roam and eat as much as possible. You want to give them as much as possible area for them. It is still within your pride territory, so to speak. They will be, but your home, as in where you sleep, shouldn't occupy much more than.
We have no choice but to enter a lower energy use future. So returning to our roots of clustered housing is definitely the best choice. So, there you have it, the 5 best and worst places to build a house or village.